What if I told you that one of the most transformative powers you can tap into isn't action, but inaction? What if true mastery over your reality starts not by asserting your voice, but by intentionally choosing silence? In a world overwhelmed with opinions, demands, and constant stimulation, ignoring has become a revolutionary act. But not just any kind of ignoring, it's the kind that's woven with wisdom. Ignoring like the wise do, out of awareness, compassion, and clarity. Most people think power comes from control, from reacting, from defending themselves. They believe their identity is confirmed every time they win an argument or put their words above someone else's. Yet, the ancient masters of the East, especially in the Buddhist tradition, taught something very different. They taught that the one who doesn't react is freer than the one who always responds, that anyone who refuses to waste energy on what doesn't deserve it starts to govern their inner world like a calm emperor. Imagine for a moment you're walking along a mountain trail. With every step, someone throws stones at you, hoping you'll stop, turn around, and fight back. But you stay silent and steady, and every stone just falls to the ground without touching you. Far off, the noise fades. The mountain stands unmoved by the wind. This is the art of wise ignoring. This video dives deep, not into the ego that insists on being right, but into the soul that longs for peace. We'll explore the subtle power of non-reaction, how Buddhism has taught for centuries the path to equanimity, and why not engaging is one of the highest forms of protecting your energy. We'll show you why you don't have to respond to everything, how to tell what deserves your attention and what's just trying to drain you, and how to build an unshakable mind in the middle of chaos. Because in noisy times, conscious silence becomes the greatest wisdom. Get ready to discover a teaching as old as it is powerful, a secret, hidden in plain sight but understood by few. When ignoring comes from understanding, not indifference. It's a way of loving your peace. Protecting your peace means protecting your soul. When Siddhartha Gautama, the prince who gave up his kingdom, sat under the Bodhi tree, he wasn't seeking the noise of the world, but its silent heart. The Buddha, as he came to be called, didn't teach his followers to respond aggressively, win debates, or protect their social image. He taught them to see clearly, and when you see clearly, you stop engaging with what has no real substance. One of Buddhism's deepest teachings is detachment. But that doesn't mean shutting off your feelings. It means not getting tangled up in them. It means observing an emotion, a judgment, or criticism like you'd watch a cloud float across the sky. You notice it, accept it, and let it pass. This is key to understanding the spiritual power of ignoring others. It's not contempt, but inner mastery. Buddhists call this upekkha, equanimity. It's the crowning jewel among the four sublime states of mind, alongside compassion, loving kindness, and empathetic joy. Equanimity means staying centered even when the world shakes around you. It means ignoring not out of indifference or pride, but from compassion that keeps your energy from spilling into distractions that don't support your path. Take a historical example. When Buddha was confronted by provocateurs, he didn't get angry. He responded with questions. When insulted, he didn't retaliate, but smiled. When a man shouted harsh words expecting a reaction, Buddha simply said, "If someone offers you a gift and you don't accept it, who owns the gift?" In this way, the insult bounced back to the attacker, not through force, but emptiness. This approach was revolutionary at the time, even subversive, because while leaders and priests argued over status, Buddha taught that true freedom comes when you stop basing your identity on others' judgments. As the Dhammapada says, like a solid rock, the wise remain unmoved by praise or blame. The Mahayana and Zen schools of Buddhism took this wisdom even further. In Zen, the teacher doesn't respond with long explanations, but with silence, a gesture, or a paradox. They teach that wisdom isn't in the answers we give, but in the space we create between stimulus and reaction. In that space lies our freedom. So wise ignoring isn't a tactic to show superiority, but a path to the sovereignty of the soul. It frees us from the mask theater, where everyone wants to be right, and connects us with the bright center that watches without judgment, without reaction, without attachment. At the heart of Buddhist teaching is the image of the mind as a calm lake. When the lake is still, it reflects the moon, stars, and sky perfectly. But when you stir it or throw stones in, what you see is distorted. This metaphor reveals a core truth. When we react, we lose clarity. When we observe, we begin to understand. Wise ignoring doesn't mean closing your eyes or running from life. It's about protecting the purity of your inner lake. In a world full of stimuli, opinions, and reactive emotions, ignoring is not weakness, it's spiritual strength. Not passivity, but a conscious choice to not feed what doesn't build you up. Buddhism teaches that everything we perceive, through senses, other people's words, opinions, judgments, is impermanent, like echoes in an empty cave. The Buddha called this anicca, the impermanence of all things. So if insults don't last, why carry them as a burden for years? Why let outside noise control your inner state? Here's a key principle: cause and effect. In Buddhist thought, everything we experience comes from a cause and produces an effect. If we react to criticism with anger, we plant seeds for more suffering. But if we watch the emotion rise without acting on it, we break the cycle, we free our karma, and that in itself is a quiet revolution. Zen, the Japanese branch of Buddhism, deepens this teaching through a seemingly simple practice: zazen, seated meditation. It's not about escaping the world, but about watching your thoughts like clouds drifting across the sky. You don't cling to the clouds nor try to push them away by force. You simply breathe and observe. Over time, this practice naturally carries over into everyday life. When someone offends you, you don't react right away. You breathe, observe, and choose to act from presence, not impulse. A powerful example is the monk who, after being slapped, didn't respond. His disciple, shocked, asked why he didn't defend his dignity. The master answered, "What value is there in defending a self that has no real existence?" This simple statement reflects one of Buddhism's core truths. The ego is an illusion built from attachment to our perceptions. Ignoring what feeds the ego is a step toward true freedom. That said, this doesn't mean accepting abuse or violence. Buddhism clearly distinguishes between non-reaction and passivity. Wise ignoring includes setting healthy boundaries out of compassion, without hatred or revenge. It's the art of acting without being controlled by emotion, responding without getting trapped. A mind trained not to react doesn't become hardened, but lighter, like a lotus flower rooted in mud, yet remaining spotless. So when someone tries to hurt you, you don't play their game. When everything around you shakes, you become the steady center. That's the practice, that's the power. Mastering this doesn't happen overnight. It requires inner awareness, humility, and consistent effort. But each time you choose silence over automatic reaction, detachment over outside approval, you strengthen a rare and precious quality: mastery over your own energy. According to the sacred texts of Mahayana Buddhism, the Bodhisattva, the awakened being who chooses to stay in the world to help others, acts not out of noise, but from deep silence. This silence isn't a lack of words, but a presence so complete that no insult can penetrate it. At that point, ignoring becomes a practice as refined as the most delicate spiritual art. It's the invisible sword that cuts through the ego, the armor that protects the soul. In a culture obsessed with responding, constantly needing to voice opinions, prove points, defend positions, and persuade. Ignoring becomes a revolutionary act. But here's an important distinction. Ignoring is not contempt, it's discernment. It's not about shutting your heart, but opening it wide enough that trivial things no longer sway it. Buddha taught that suffering comes from attachment, to recognition, to identity, to outside judgment. When someone ignores, criticizes, or betrays you, what really hurts isn't the act itself, but the story you tell yourself about it. I'm not enough, I'm rejected, I must defend myself. These stories are the ego's chains. The deepest form of ignoring is releasing those stories. It's not ignoring other people, but ignoring your own interpretation. Many Buddhist masters point out that true spiritual strength isn't about how many teachings or mantras you know, but about keeping your balance when the world falls apart. This is the practice of upekkha, one of the four sublime states, often translated as imperturbability. It's not emotional indifference, but a calmness that doesn't depend on what's happening outside. The art of ignoring also asks a tough question. How much energy do you waste reacting to things that don't deserve it? Every uncontrolled emotion, every repetitive thought, every impulsive response drains your life force. Buddhism teaches that preserving this energy is key to moving forward on the path to enlightenment. Ignoring, then, is a way to protect your inner sanctuary. There's an old Zen saying, "When the wise point to the moon, the fool looks at the finger." In other words, the more we focus on surface stuff, the criticism, judgment, passing opinions, the further we drift from deeper truth. Learning to ignore means learning to see the moon through the noise of pointing fingers, the distractions and demands. It's also crucial to realize that ignoring from awareness isn't disconnecting, but aligning. It's acting from your center, not from the edges. The monk who smiles at provocation does so not because he feels nothing, but because he understands peace doesn't depend on outside circumstances. By ignoring the attack, he embraces his practice, and that's compassion, not feeding the cycle of suffering. Often, the smartest thing you can do for yourself and others is to not respond on the same emotional wavelength that's attacking you. Rise up, breathe. Remember, you are not your emotions, not your passing thoughts, not the projections of others. Every time you decide not to react, not to get pulled in, not to respond from ego, you say, "I'm in charge of my temple." You honor the Buddhist truth that real freedom is born in the space between stimulus and response, and that space holds your deepest power. On the spiritual journey, ignoring is neither running away nor apathy. It's a higher form of self-care, a shield forged through discernment. But how can someone living an everyday life apply this wisdom without falling into avoidance or repression? Here are 5 key practices to help you develop the art of conscious ignoring without losing connection, without shutting down. First, silence as a sacred choice. Before you respond, pause. Take a deep breath. Notice the emotion that arises. Silence isn't emptiness, it's fertile ground where conscious responses grow. By ignoring certain triggers, hurtful words, provocations, or outside expectations, you're not silencing your voice, you're strengthening your inner throne. Make silence a daily habit. Start with just 5 minutes each day of simply listening to your breath. No judgment, no forcing. That inner space becomes your refuge when the world gets loud. Second, guard your energy. Not everything deserves your attention. Think of your vital energy like a sacred coin. Every thought you feed, every emotional reaction costs you. When you get caught up in pointless arguments or other people's drama, you drain your essence. Ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Does it build me up or tear me down? Learning to ignore isn't about being cold. It's self-love in action. Stop being an open field where everything just lands. Learn to be like the sky, vast, calm, and unshakable. Third, practice observation, the mirror of others. Whenever someone irritates you or projects negativity, ask yourself, which part of me is reacting? Am I really seeing them or just my own unhealed wounds? Ignoring someone isn't denying them. It's recognizing that their judgment only has power if you hand over your identity. This practice turns automatic reactions into chances for self-discovery. The true wise person ignores because they understand that everything that affects them is part of themselves. Fourth, strengthen your spiritual center. When you're off balance, you wobble in any breeze. But when your center is grounded through meditation, reflection, prayer, or time in nature, you stand firm like a mountain in a storm. Create a daily ritual of connecting with the sacred, whether you call it God, emptiness, presence, or silence. That close connection with yourself builds a vibration that naturally pushes away anything not in tune with your higher frequency. Fifth, remember that ignoring protects what you're building. Every time you choose not to react, you're saying, "My peace is more important than your chaos." Ignoring from a place of Buddhist wisdom is a compassionate act. You don't let yourself get contaminated, and you don't let others keep the cycle of suffering going. Ignoring means looking with love and choosing not to get involved. When you live these practices, ignoring goes beyond defense and becomes an art. A way to return to your center, let go of the need for approval, and transform your life into a sanctuary of deep calm. Looking at the heart of Buddhist teachings and many other spiritual paths, we find a hidden gem, shaped by time and fueled by compassion. Inner freedom isn't born from controlling what's outside, but from mastering how we respond. And from that peaceful mastery rises the highest virtue. The power to ignore what doesn't really matter. Ignoring isn't contempt or arrogance. It's a refined kind of discernment, a language only those who've stopped fighting their ego and started listening to their soul understand. When you ignore wisely, you're not running from the world. You're choosing which worlds to live in inside yourself. On this journey, you've come to realize that ignoring can be more revolutionary than reacting, that silence can cut deeper than 1,000 words, and that giving up the last word isn't weakness, but a spiritual strength. When you stop reacting to outside noise, you begin to hear the quiet whisper of your true self. Remember that. The great sages, mystics, and enlightened ones weren't those who forced their way through, but those who mastered detachment. Buddha didn't ignore the world out of indifference, but because he understood that many voices are just echoes of unresolved pain. Ignoring doesn't harden the heart. It opens it only to what lifts you up. In a world full of non-stop stimulation, endless opinions and judgments, falling like acid rain, learning to ignore is a practice of mental hygiene, a gift to your soul. When you decide not to engage, not to respond to empty criticism, and not to chase outside approval, you create space for peace, focus, and growth to flourish. And you're not alone on this path. More and more people are waking up to the truth that not everything needs a response. Not every word deserves to enter our energy field, and that we can and should choose what truly resonates. That's inner sovereignty. So if this message has struck a chord with you, if these words have sparked some clarity, I invite you to do something simple but powerful. Subscribe to this channel to keep exploring transformative wisdom. Hit the like button if you feel this energy has helped you, and most importantly, share it with anyone who might need this quiet reminder. Peace isn't shouted, it's cultivated. We'll be back soon with more teachings that, like this one, don't aim to change the world from the outside, but from within. because the deepest change always starts with the perspective we choose. And sometimes the wisest perspective is the one that, with love, chooses to ignore.